So, when I was posting recently, concerning ignorance and that sort of thing, and letting people have it a little bit not so kind and gentle in that video, but to let people know that the severity of the situation is great, and for me to continue just to put things out without getting any success or recognition for it seems futile to me, because I can basically see from what it looks like that these major platforms are, they're gatekeeping. They're not letting people on their platforms. They're not letting me on their platform, likely because they don't want to upset the what provides them with their success and opportunity and that sort of thing. I question that even somebody like Joe Rogan could have me on and not be somehow punished or reprimanded in some way for doing so. And since that's where it stands, and I see a lot of these platforms that I've attempted to communicate with that don't actually respond to my request in any way, are doing that likely to keep from having to acknowledge that I even attempted to communicate with them in the first place. Like it's some kind of collaboration. And I've mentioned something to that effect concerning the living conditions that they basically forced me to have, and the crimes and that sort of thing that I don't question are being committed by the system that is instituting that on me and other people. That it's likely that there's quite a bit of cooperation between various entities, like the Justice Department, how the FBI basically hangs up on me, and the police. I filed a police report, and oddly enough, they let their captain go, or chief of police, just shortly after, almost immediately after I filed that police report, which implicated certain offices of government as possibly involved in the potential crimes that I don't question that they commit. So it's like, first it was the Justice Department and the attorney, Attorney General, but there's another one that's even the U.S. Attorney because I've been to the Attorney General. I implicated them in likely the corruption as well. And so this was the mayor's office that I implicated when I made my police report, and told them, well, they don't even answer my calls, they don't reply to my emails. When I go down there, they may have a ring type camera set up where if they see me, apparently they're not answering the door or answering the machine. And so I don't question that it's all part of this collusion that goes along, and I don't question it goes into the private law firms that likely would otherwise represent my situation, except my situation involves people that likely also run the private legal counsel, or they have enough sway or influence over them that convinces them not to take on my case. And we'll see how that goes. But every legal office that I've contacted about it so far, including one that's already actually involved in suing the city of Minneapolis Public Housing, has not offered me any assistance in my matter. None. Or even references to attorneys that may be interested. Nothing. And so within the past few months, like 4 people have impliedly deceased, and I had taken pictures of 2. One that actually was laid out on the floor, discolored, a bluish type grayish color from what it appeared. However, they actually were said to have survived, but later passed away in the thereafter. And so the person that lived next door, and that person was like on the floor beneath me, possibly the apartment beneath me. And so the other person was the apartment next to me. And all I seen of them and that ordeal was on my security camera. And they had just wheeled out a bag with a zipper on it that looked like it had somebody inside. And I'm not saying it was that person, but I have not seen that person, and they have since apparently cleaned the apartment and made it ready possibly for somebody else to move in. And then there are 2, those were in about the past month, and then the 2 others were in like a month or 2 before that, were also just one apartment over from me, with only one in the middle, and then the other one was one apartment over from them with the laundry room in the middle. So those 2, and then as I mentioned, if I haven't brought it up in a video, that the person that occupied my unit was also said to have passed away after they found them lying on the floor unresponsive. And so there's that. And then all the evidence that I've accumulated through the through the filters that I've used and through the duct tape and that sort of thing that I've dabbed on areas and used a magnifying glass type camera to show what that looks like, as well as they've had what I don't question were testing companies that were favorable to them, likely producing results that they were going to be okay with. That when I go to the mayor's office, who appoints the people that are in charge of this Minneapolis public housing, they appoint that position. They don't answer my calls, they don't reply to my emails, and when I go there, they don't answer the call box. When I had just gotten there after somebody, and they were still talking to whoever it was at the other end of that box until I got up when they were done, and they would not answer when I buzzed the office. So I don't question there's a camera, and if they see it's me, then they do not seem to answer. Possibly that may be the cause. And so, you know, then I get into, well, you know, they're likely also controlling these legal offices, these law offices, private, which, you know, you may be familiar with, where some of them will take a case for injury and that sort of thing, and likely just wait until there's a settlement and then things get divvied up then. But they don't seem to be interested in my matter at all. And I don't question that there's some also collusion between those private law firms and the establishment concerning this matter. And the other interesting thing that that seems interesting to me is that when I try to get out of there, they don't really have any places that are willing to accept people that are on a fixed income, that aren't as questionable as the place I already am. And even the one that, even though it was questionable, that I may have agreed to, it was, you know, according to how much you make, had only one unit that they offered me, and that was on a ground floor, basically with a window where I could just see people's feet walking by, and that would be my window, and anybody could possibly get in. I mean, if I left the window open by mistake, almost anybody could just walk right in, and or, you know, climb in. And that was in what was described even in news stories as one of the worst areas in downtown Minneapolis for crime and that sort of thing. So I decided not to go with that apartment. So it was almost like, well, if you want to get out of where you're at, you know, here's your option, and they'll be able to just break in and take all your stuff, and, you know, you'll have no really secure living situation. And the next one that I was able to find was just a low priced apartment studio that on the day that I was supposed to sign the lease had a rent increase that very day. So another one that is for people that are on like a budget told me that I should wait until a certain time to put in my application rather than right then, as if I didn't qualify. And I did qualify, very likely, but they just didn't want to allow me to put my application in at that time for some reason. And then when I went back there recently, they said there were 62 people now ahead of me. So it's starting to look like that they not only control or influence the legal representation, public and private, it also is appearing that they influence these property managers and property that might have the ability to allow me to move in under their qualifications, which are much healthier and nicer than what I have, which is almost anything basically, with very few exceptions. And so it's starting to look like this is basically a fairly controlled environment, from the justice system to the legal representation to the living conditions or living facilities. And it looks like they basically run, for the most part, the entire gambit. And so literally there may be no way out of this for me unless I can somehow escape Minnesota, which even then I don't question that this is a nationwide situation, even though people may not be aware of what this may be happening in their state as well. I don't question it, it does. And I don't question whoever these people are behind this have that kind of influence as well in their location. And you know, as I've had interactions with even the city council, where one of the people that worked for the city council was pretty gung-ho about assisting me. They had basically done almost many things to sabotage their efforts. And including not posting the meeting until the day of the meeting in the building concerning, you know, the health and well-being of the people that live there. So almost nobody showed up except me. I knew about it beforehand. The people that posted knew about it. The city council knew about it, so they were there. And one other person showed up. And they also said that they thought that they were being harmed physically, and, you know, their health was being damaged by their apartment. And they did not mention that. To my knowledge, they said that I was the only one, and they downplayed it, which basically these people have continued to lie. And apparently there's no way of competing with that. They just lie, and it's put down in the record as fact or something, and they just continue to do that. It's very corrupt. So as we were continuing to figure out ways to resolve the matter, the city council person, assistant, was offered a job with as the CEO of a nonprofit, which they apparently took. And the next person that took their place was also offered some position somewhere else, and they took that. And then what happened next was that council member lost their election, their re-election bid, and they were no longer a council person. You know, that's where things stand right now. And then this is where, you know, they keep me there because it's likely the place where they're most comfortable keeping me, as it's destroying my health every day. I'm unable to function. They have basically all the offices, or most of them, that I've attempted to contact that I'm aware of. There may be more I'm not aware of, but all the ones that I've contacted so far have basically been inept, negligent. They claim that they don't have anything to do with that sort of thing. So it's basically just been a situation where they're able to control what I do, and what they can't control, they just basically keep me in these horrible living conditions so that I can't function enough to worry them in that way, concern them in that way. And so, you know, as far as putting out Bible content and that sort of thing, I may just be leaving that alone for a while, because right now this is getting to be a very serious matter. I mean, it was serious before. If you don't think human rights violations and crimes against humanity are serious, that's the main part. That's the main issue. And then there's what they're doing to me on top of that to keep me from accessing justice, or, you know, getting away from their concentration camp. And it just doesn't seem like they're ever going to let me out of there. This is going to be a serious, and I mean, even to get to another building where it's not just about as bad as what I have now. They're that serious. And you know, like I say, that's the gist of what's going on. And don't question that this doesn't go all the way to the White House, and it doesn't go all the way to the top intelligence agencies. I've called the FBI. They've hung up on me many times. They are well informed about what's going on, and they are also appearing to be deeply rooted in this collusion that's taking place. And I mean deeply rooted. It's like the FBI is running this operation. And you know, and I've also mentioned that I don't question that the CIA and their, you know, their mind control type efforts in the past may also have something to do with this, the MK Ultra type stuff, because I have actually, I don't know if I've mentioned it much, but I may have mentioned it, that that when I'm in my apartment, I don't question that I'm being somehow radiated, or some energy type weapon is being used on me, because you know, like I say, for years and years they've been doing that, and I don't mention it too much because there doesn't really seem to be any way to prove it. And I'm one of those people that I like to have proof if I'm going to make a claim. But that seems to be something that's not very easily done, especially when it comes to you know, an energy weapon, because you know, who knows what it is. I don't. All I know is that I feel it when I'm sitting in my chair, and I feel it when I'm laying down in the place where I sleep. And I don't feel it now. I don't feel it outside. I have questioned these little cameras that are like, they look like a half of sphere that are sometimes on like public transit or public streets and that sort of thing, where it just looks like, you know, a half a sphere with tinted glass, and it apparently is a camera. But I have questioned that those are not smaller, downsized versions of those lasers that they use on these military planes, where they showed one where it had a very similar feature. It was a half a sphere, and behind that sphere was a rotating like a gyroscopic type rotating device that could be pointed in a direction that they wanted to aim it. And I have been around these cameras before, including on public transit, and I was at over by the park yesterday, and I felt something like on my head that felt like it was similar to what I feel in my apartment, even stronger. And you know, and at first I didn't see anything, so I crossed the street and I looked back at where I was, and there was one of those half sphere type cameras right behind where I was standing, and it was on like the back of my head where I had felt that energy hitting me, what felt like energy hitting me. And so I don't question that a lot of these cameras that are being set up that look like half a sphere are possibly weapons. They're weaponized. So, you know, that's something that I wanted to mention, because I haven't mentioned that, you know, not only are they using this, keeping me in this concentration camp that's destroying my health, but they're also, and have been for many years, using some sort of what feels like it's some sort of an energy weapon on me the entire time I'm there. I also haven't mentioned that there's other things going on where they're keeping an eye on me. They have me in a building right now that doesn't only have those cameras on every floor, almost every corner of every floor, but they have you know, they have other things going on besides that. And you know, that's something that I may bring up here shortly. I may put a video out on it to show it, but I'd like to be out of that building first, because it's going to reveal a lot of detail about where I'm at. So that's something that I wanted to talk about a little bit, you know, and let people know that if you think this isn't, that this government is okay and everything's on the up and up, this is serious high-level persecution that they're doing to me, and it likely goes all the way to the top. And I don't question, and I've went to the military already once when it was out at the place where they were showing the ice facility out there in Fort Snelling in Minneapolis, and they were protesting it, and like Ilhan Omar and that showed up there. That's the building that used to house Amy Klobuchar at one time. And when I went out there, I also stopped by the military, because the military's office is in there, and they were not interested in what I had to say about how I don't question that the military may have to take action in this country to get control over these corrupt politicians and the corruption that's taken place. I've talked to the military already, and it's very likely that somebody's going to need the military to get these people out of the way. There's a serious corrupt system going on, and I mean, we're talking about when they're exposing the fraud and the Medicare. I don't question that's just a sideshow, keeping people unaware of this. Basically these death camps that they're running, that they keep me in, by the way, and I'm a high-level Christian, that they have known about. Okay, so I don't question the reason why that they keep the U.S. running on a budget that has to be funded every so often, and they keep the military on a separate budget, you know, to have to rely on them, the government, to fund them, rather than having separate funding independently, you know, autonomously, just ready to go, is likely because the government is fairly corrupt, and in their only potential threat is very possibly military, including their own. And you know, I don't question that they've already put people in these positions of authority in the military that are likely on their side. It seems like every administration does it. They get to handpick these people, and then they're likely not going to allow the military troops to assemble in some fashion that might remove them from their positions. Same with the police. The police, like I've said, I've reported this crime to the police, and they basically gave me a phone number to a van that travels around the city and works with, like, you know, mentally disturbed people and homeless. And you know, I thought, is this just being sarcastic, or, you know, I'm not sure what that was about. And but after I reported it to the police, then all of a sudden the chief of police was in trouble enough to possibly resign over something that was some kind of an issue at the time. And so I mean, like, right after. The same with the U.S. Attorney's Office. When I reported it to them, all of a sudden, like, you know, half of their staff quit or resigned or something. And you know, so there seems to be something bigger than what's, you know, obviously apparent. And who knows what, whether they coincide or not. But it's getting to be very strange, because I've contacted the military previously here in Minnesota. They seemed as crooked as you could get. I don't question that they you know, encourage these military people or enable them to act lawlessly, or and, you know, enable them to partake in some sort of behavior that might compromise their status in the military or overall ability to remain in the military, you know, as a backup plan to possible I don't want to call it an insurrection, but if that's the word, that they've turned into some synonym for treason. That's not exactly what I mean, but definitely act of you know, resistance towards the government. These people aren't playing around. They basically seized this country, and you know, they give you these protests and that sort of thing, and these crowds of people that appear like they're rebellious against the system, but like some people that are in the know about that sort of thing say they're actually being paid by wealthy people to do that, some of them, and likely establishing precedent for some sort of dystopia, like us versus them. Like they'll be fortified in their ivory tower, so to speak, or secure locations, and then you'll have the, you know, the grungy, you know, protesters outside, which is where they are likely going to keep everybody alongside those grungy protesters. And I don't question why they're using them to protest with seemingly no credibility or lists of, you know, reasonable outcomes and that sort of thing. Those people are basically there to create this dystopia. If you're watching CNN or MSNBC, you're likely so far out of touch with anything they care about or are concerned about, then that they possibly don't even have to worry about you. You know, but the conservative channels, they may still be keeping tabs on, because those are likely some of the people there may actually still have some hope that there's some positive outcome awaiting them in the future, and there may be somebody who they wouldn't mind endorsing or supporting to get that done. So that's why I don't question it, like Fox News. And they have, if you watch them, they have the politicians on. I mean, you want to talk about conservative or Republican platforms, man, Fox News has them there like a care facility for Republicans and Republican politicians. It's like a daycare camp or something. They just show up. So, you know, so don't question they have the conservatives in their back pocket. They might still irritate the CNN left crowd, who apparently still has enough money to live their life fairly decently in this country. And so they haven't necessarily had to you know, hit the skids yet. But you know, which is another reason why I don't question that they remain, you know, just some opposing force rather than some neutral force that is in favor of doing right. Even as much as, you know, they see right as basically you know, lawlessness when it comes to whatever they want. You know, oh, well, you know, they should be allowed to do this. Yeah, well, as soon as this world is a better place, maybe that'll happen. But not until then, in my opinion. And of course, the world is likely not ever going to be a better place through that system. They'll always try to undo, it seems, what's been done by the other side, and the other side apparently tries to undo what they do when they get the chance. So it's not even necessarily a system that is even going to ever work for everybody. It's just a tit for tat type, you know, how liberal can I be with as much money as I have in the bank when, you know, without any of that money in the bank or wherever they're getting it from, they may not have a voice at all, you know. So money seems to be the big factor in a lot of how these people think. It almost is their thinking process, is whether or not they actually have to struggle until they have to think like somebody who has to take life seriously, very seriously. Not like somebody who gets money and then they get to go do what they want and they hang out and they let their free flag fly and you know, disenfranchise large segments of the population because that's not something that they feel they have to go along with. So that's a whole nother issue. And the wealthier are basically the same. They basically sit back, you know, like James Bond, you know, they think that, oh, there's somebody out there that James Bond is trying to stop from getting a laser beam that can split things in half and cause all kinds of trouble, when it's really they're spying on people to get ideas for ways to make themselves wealthy. If they knew that there was somebody that had an idea that could make them rich, you can believe James Bond isn't going to be kept out of that show. You know, they put it in the movies that James Bond and old Tom Cruise is out to save the world from some malicious activity, but it's more or less to steal ideas that make them wealthy, especially from people that can't fund them themselves. And that's one of them. I don't question that's certainly one of them. And you know, while they also add to the narrative like, oh, we're going to the moon and we have all this technology that we're, you know, super beings, we just got to stop crazy people from getting the power, and or, you know, whatever, however they label those people, I don't know. The movie kind of puts them in a bad light, but you know, they just need to, you know, keep that from happening. What they're really not showing you is what they're really keeping from happening is they're keeping people like me from freedom, so that I can't interfere with their corrupt system that they've already established. that's who you know, Dr. No is, right? Or Goldfinger. You know, they don't want me getting my fingers on any gold. You know, not enough to establish myself in a position where I can change the world anyway. They give that to Elon and Zuckerberg and Bezos, who, by the way, if I didn't mention it in this talk, I got a blog on how Amazon was a bookstore here in Minneapolis that I had brought to somebody's attention many years ago. And that's how Bezos started his empire, was on a bookstore. And if I'm not mistaken, it was a bookstore. And that bookstore was called Amazon. It was downtown. So they basically have just been, you know, hijacking my ideas for years and years and years, getting rich off them or building empires based on them, and then just keeping me out of the way. I'm now just some scourge on planet Earth that they they try not to recognize in any way, including emails. If I want to be on their platform, they don't seem to answer those either. They don't even want to establish some sort of trail of communication with me because they're so crooked. They don't even want to acknowledge that I exist, just because they basically stole most everything from me, built their empire on it, and now they're just going to keep me away from it as long as they can, which is why they keep me in the death camp, the concentration camp they forced me to live in. And they're not letting me out of that sucker either. I've tried. There's no escape. Yeah. So, you know, so don't let these people play you. They got a whole nother thing going on. And and then of course, you know, that's how they build their empire. That's how they maintain it. And then they just start to seed people's garden with weeds, basically, so that they don't ever necessarily are able to grow anything worthwhile without it being affected by what they've put there. And that's basically how it is now. I'm telling you, it has to be done. I mean, it doesn't have to be done. I won't say it has to be done, but it should be done. You know, they don't mind supporting all these countries around the world and playing the game for everybody else, but not for people here. And like I say, if they don't, you know, if I started a military, first of all, they have to be likely Christian or moral people. And a lot of these gun god glory type people have already snatched those potential Christians away, so that they'll follow that goofy doctrine that they keep feeding them over about how it's a personal relationship, you don't need to be answering to anybody, and all that. Because they don't want them answering to anybody. Coming up on your left side. So So basically that's where things are. They're basically if you think you're getting away from these people, you're crazy. I won't say you're crazy, but you might want to think again. They're already working their plan to try to divide people even more through, you know, however they're working on it. Religion, you know, science. People have already basically basically called them out on a lot of their science claims. You know, it's when COVID came along, it came along at a great time because there were a lot of controversial topics that were about to poke their head up. Flat Earth started to, and I wouldn't even question that Flat Earth was enough to set them off onto their plandemic. You know, oh, it was a lab. Now they're trying to say it was formed in a lab. I don't know anybody that had COVID. I have been living in a concentration camp that's destroying my health for years now, and I wasn't weak enough to get sick from COVID for some reason. And I go to stores and I ride transit, public transit. You know, I didn't wear a mask really to speak of. And never got sick. Not from that. So you can believe, dude, that they got all the people they need to keep playing their game as long as they keep giving them money. As long as you keep supporting these people with some loot, they'll be there for you. A lot of them. Whatever shall I do? Whatever shall I do? And that's kind of the whole basic premise of what these people are about. They're not going to likely be smart enough to dig themselves out of the hole that the government put them in, so that they'll be nice and loyal for as long as they have to be. I don't question that. And this is Minnesota, this is the United States. You can see I'm outside. I can say whatever I want. I can scream as loud as I want. And they're not concerned in the least, from what it looks like. In the least. Who's going to stop them? And you know what I'm saying? And that's why I was talking about how the military, how as a Christian leader, I have to at least start something, get the ball rolling with people that are real Christians, not these, you know, them that say they're Christians and they're not type thing. Those people are, you know, likely the ones that they favor, and then they have their platforms, their narratives that go along with what they're trying to accomplish. Try to get back before I choke on the pollution. Plenty of.